Carol, why don't we start out by asking you, is stress being experienced today differently than it was years ago?
Well, Teresa, in many ways it's the same, and in some ways it's different because there are people are people. So we're all, as you say, we're going to experience stress at home and we're going to experience stress at work. But there is a greater expectation of people now, particularly working in industry. And so is it different today to many years ago? Well, technology brings us greater stressors. Our family life brings us greater stressors. And so it goes on. There are greater expectations, and we have to do our very best to be resilient to manage the stressors that are around for us. But I think one of the first things we have to remember is that stress is not good for you. It's never good for you.
Right.
What is good for you is pressure. So very, very simply, pressure is good for you and stress is not. When does pressure become stress? When you have too much of it. So there are days when we can manage and we're juggling all the balls up in the air and we're coping with home and we're coping with work and everything's working fine. And all of a sudden, something happens and you can no longer cope. And so therefore you're feeling out of control. You can't manage the situation. And so therefore that's when you start coming into the stress zone. So is it different to today, to many, many years ago? Some differences and some things are the same because people are people.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So you're telling us that pressure, and I think it's probably the pressure from if we're type A personalities, because we hear about that, type B or C. So if you are a person who is a highly driven, to the point of you want perfection in your life, that's added pressure onto us, and that elevates the tendency of it moving into the stress factor, the stress zone, because we have such high expectations of ourselves. And that's the pressure that switches over into stress. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yes, you are hearing me correctly. The type A person is the person that has high expectations of themselves, high expectations of others, is highly ambitious, talks too quickly, eats too quickly, never has time for anybody else, all those sorts of things. And they are the perfectionist, and they probably can be more than a challenge to actually work for them. So therefore, what we're trying to get as a personality, try and get the balance. And that's what we try and get. So therefore, is somebody who is a high achiever and has great expectations of themselves and who's highly motivated and highly driven, are they going to probably experience more stress? Well, they may well do, because they are raising the bar higher and higher and higher. And those same people don't usually have too much time for the other individuals who may be type B or type C. So therefore, is there a greater amount of stress with type A people? Well, the answer is yes to that. And many of those type A people who don't learn how to get that balance in their lives can sometimes, I'm going to say sometimes, end up having serious health issues.
Okay, so most likely the type A people believe that what they are feeling is a good type of stress, or what they are expressing is a good type of stress. Is that so? Is that true?
There is no such thing as good stress.
Okay.
We're talking about pressure.
Yeah.
Pressure you can manage, pressure and control of. Pressure is good for you. Stress is not able to manage, out of control, and not good for you. Now, you can kid yourself that, I thrive on stress. And I'm going to say to you, actually, you don't. You're thriving on pressure. You need pressure in your life. I'm not suggesting you don't. You need pressure to get yourself up in the morning. You need pressure to manage your daily activity. Pressure is good for you and pressure is healthy. But when it switches into too much and you can't see the wood from the trees and there's too much going around you, balancing all these different balls up in the air, and you really can't deal with it anymore, and just one more thing comes in, well, as we well know, people will experience fatigue, they'll experience exhaustion, and then people can experience and do experience burnout.
Yes.
So is it easy to recognize when someone's experiencing, just before that time, or recognize the signs and symptoms in ourselves? The answer is, Teresa, is that the signs and symptoms of stress are there. However, people don't necessarily take any notice of them. They think to themselves, saying, I can manage, it's just me, it's just the way it is at the moment, it'll be better in 3 weeks' time, 3 months' time, or 3 years' time. And we can kid ourselves, and we can do that on a regular basis, but actually what we're needing to do is to manage our daily activity when it's actually happening. We can't put off tomorrow what we should be doing today.
Yes, that's so very true. And that's what I call conscious living. You have to be aware of the signals that your body is giving you, but we aren't used to paying attention to our bodies. We're used to just pushing on through and thinking that things are going to be getting better, after this particular incident or situation is over. Is there a taboo about saying that you're stressed? I take great stock in what we are, the words that we speak, the words that we think, because if they're negative, then that turns into our reality. What is it that you say about that?
You asked me if there's a taboo about stress. The answer is there is still, even though I've been working in the profession for over 20 years, excuse me, there is still a taboo about stress. There's still a taboo about stress. There's still a taboo about mental health illness. And we know that stress can lead to mental health illnesses.
Yes.
So therefore, does the person in industry want to say that they're experiencing stress? Well, they actually may not want to do that. Why? Because they may think to themselves, well, if I say I'm stressed, they may see, the company may see that as a sign of weakness. The company may see that and put that as a black mark against me. The company may think to themselves, I can't cope, I'm inefficient. So therefore, even though I know I'm experiencing stress, therefore I won't say I'm experiencing, and therefore I will try and hide it under the carpet. And some companies, Teresa, are very happy for them to hide it under the carpet, because they want to think to themselves, everybody in the company is resilient, everybody can manage, we're doing fantastically well, yada, yada, yada. Well, actually, not everybody is. And as soon as you start lifting up the carpet, you actually see there's an awful lot underneath it.
Oh, that's very good. Because I know I never thought that companies thought of stress as a weakness. They do, I'm sure, see people and their behavior, whether it's through, they start to see maybe the productivity of a person isn't that good. Their thinking or their ideas that are generating are coming a little slower, but they don't contribute that to it being stress. Instead, they may, said, oh, he's just, having a bad day right now, instead of it being the beginnings, even showing those signs of stress. What are some of the signs and the symptoms that are often prevalent when stress is becoming a bigger part of someone's life? Because, if we don't know them, a lot of times we can't acknowledge that that's what we're experiencing.
There are some very simple ways of identifying for ourselves as to whether we're experiencing stress. It could be irritability, it could be switching off from people, it could be drinking too much, it could be smoking too much, it could be not sleeping at night, it could be withdrawing from your friends, it could be, and you say to somebody who's experiencing stress, you accuse them of being, or you say to them, you're stressed, the chances are they'll say things like, no, of course I'm not stressed. But nevertheless, they may well be. And there's nobody here, Teresa, that's listening to your podcast who's not aware of waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and not being able to get back to sleep again.
Yeah.
Everybody's aware of that. There's nobody listening to this podcast who's not aware of going to bed at night and laying there and watching the clock tick by 11 o'clock, 11:30, 12 o'clock. People are aware, but then nevertheless, do they do anything about it? And in some ways, this comes in with this part of, we have to be seen to be strong and resilient, and we can manage and we can deal with it. And so the signs of symptoms are certainly there. You end up going to our doctor, you can end up going to the doctor, and the doctor says to you, and you say to them, you give them some of your signs and symptoms, and they'll say to you, oh, you're experiencing stress, I'll give you a week off work. Well, a week of work isn't necessarily just the answer.
Mm-hmm.
It may help. I'm not saying it doesn't. It may help, but it's not actually getting to the root of the problem. It's just actually putting a plaster on the wound. And it's not necessarily getting to the point where you can say, are you actually really getting to understand what makes you tick and why you're experiencing that stress?
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. Yeah. And people don't realize that, the stress is putting pressure on your organs, your heart, for instance, that anxiety that you may be feeling, and the palpitations, the increased palpitations of the heart, the blood pressure rise. All of those are the result of the stress that you're dealing with or unsuccessfully dealing with in your life. How does stress show up in the workplace? What are some of the signs and the effects of the stress that you see or that one can see that's in the workplace?
You start, if a manager is aware of their team and reaches out to their team and actually walks the talk and actually communicates with their team, the chances are that that manager will be aware when their team are experiencing stress or when an individual is experiencing stress.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, what's going to be showing? They're going to be showing things like lack of concentration, poor performance, poor productivity, irritability at work, not being able to actually get the job done when they should be, working extreme hours, which means either getting in extremely early or leaving extremely late. You see absenteeism, you see short-term absenteeism, you see long-term absenteeism, you also see presenteeism. Presenteeism is when the individual feels the need to be seen to be working all the time. And that very often is working in a culture which is an unhealthy working culture. So the unhealthy working culture is actually saying, yeah, I want my team to be working not quite 24/7, but I'm very happy for my team to be working from 6 a.m. till 8 p.m. And if I say to them, that's actually not a healthy workplace culture, they'll say, Carol, well, okay, but at least we've got bums on seats. And I'll say, you may have bums on seats. However, how productive do you think they are? What performance are you going to get out of them? And they'll say, well, at least they're here. And I'll say, yeah, you're right. They are there, but nevertheless, they're not necessarily going to be giving you what you need.
Mm-hmm.
For some to be working the hours they should be working, not the extra hours. So the other signs of stress, you can see people who are going home at night and who are still working on their emails. They're still answering their emails from their bosses or from their supervisors or their directors. And so therefore, this all builds up a picture. Is there is there a way of seeing exactly what's going on with stress in a company? The answer is, if you know your people, if you're managing your people, if you're listening to your people, and I don't just mean listening to them twice a year on appraisals, but I mean genuinely listening to people, and aware of your team, the chances are you will pick up the signs of stress pretty quickly. And you also want to make sure that you give acceptance, that you want your team to talk to you. You can't be a mind reader always. You can't always pick up those signs and symptoms of stress immediately. You may be working remotely. I don't know what the situation is. But it could be that you want to make this a two-way communication from boss to employee and employee to boss. Everybody is working together as a team.
Yeah.
So really, it doesn't matter who you are in the business, you're all working together for the greater good of the company.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't matter, like you said, if there are the bums, butts in the seats. That doesn't mean that you are getting the most out of that person, and they're not really present, because their concentration, their mind is somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So how does then the employee, what do you think their perspective is? Since you've been doing this for such a long time, you probably have a good read for the employee's part in the stress management aspect, because they probably don't want their employer to see them as being stressed, particularly if they think it's a weakness. So how does one deal with that?
This is where your culture comes in. If you have a culture where they say stress doesn't exist and we don't accept stress, and therefore we want everybody to work 24/7, and if they burn out, then they burn out, that's the culture that they are. And I'd suggest you don't go and work for them. Mm-hmm. However, what you're wanting for this healthy workplace culture is a culture where people are accepted to. Sometimes they do have days when they need help and support. So a counseling service can help, stress awareness programs can help. You can have the healthy culture which provides the employers the opportunity not to mollycoddle their employees and to say, oh, take days off, don't worry, but trying to get the most out of them. So if there are problems in that employee's life, the employer's got two routes. They either ignore it and say, well, it's nothing to do with me, or they say, let's talk about it, manage it, let's get you back to your peak performance as quickly as we can. That's the sensible way.
Yeah.
The person is a human being. They're not a computer. You can't just turn them off and switch them on. So therefore, they have feelings, they have emotions, and they need recognition, and they need reward, and they need to be told things like thank you, and they need to be told well done. We actually thrive on things like that.
Yes.
So you can bring about a healthy workplace culture very, very easily. But if the skills aren't there, and it all starts at the top with the C-suite team, then they need to be trained. And they need to see that as we value our people as our most important asset.
Exactly.
Without people, we have no business.
Exactly. That's right. That's right. And a lot of it, because when I'm working with people, I like them to look at their background even, because that plays a big part in how we show up as adults, because we carry some of those same traits into our adult space until we are taught differently and are open and accepting of those new ideas and ways of doing things. So I totally agree with you as far as what the culture of that workplace is, and if it's coming from the top down, that's the best place to be working. Someone who is going to be concerned about me. Yes, we're going to make money, but we have to do it with healthy people. If not, we're going to start, working in the red, and you want your people to be working in the black as you want your financial and bottom line to be in the black as well.
You also want on that one, Teresa, you want to be working together.
Yeah.
So I like to look at businesses as a community. So if you can look at your business as a working community and bring in a we culture, we meaning you and I, we're working together, that is the key. That is the key to it. So you have your family, which is a community, and you have your work, which is a community. Exactly. People like communities, so why not let's give them what they like, in which case they're going to work even harder, and they actually be committed, and they're going to feel valued, and they're going to feel recognized. And my boss then says thank you to me, and I feel like I'm on cloud 9 because my boss said thank you, and I will work that much harder because of it.
Exactly. And we spend as much time at work and with the people at work as we do our families, and sometimes more. The management, you did talk about what the role that management plays, particularly if they are aware and have systems in place to encourage and support the idea of what can we do to make your life easier and get rid of this stress? Let's deal with it and not run it under or sweep it under the rug. What are some techniques that a person can use to reduce their stress levels and really engage in a healthy lifestyle? Because that's what it is. It's totally changing your lifestyle.
let's look at one thing first. We can't actually ever get rid of our stress, and nor do we need to. Nor do we need to. We need to control.
Yeah.
We need to control our stress. So we manage our pressure and we control our stress. One of the keys that management can do is one simple word: listen. And I know there are countless people who may be listening to this who will say to me, well, I'm a manager, Carol, and I don't have time to listen to my teams. And I'd say, well, actually, you don't have time not to listen to your teams.
Right.
Because by listening, you're going to be picking up warning signs. By listening and listening attentively, and I don't mean listening with a cell phone in your hand, and I don't mean listening looking at your computer screen. I mean turning off your cell phone, turning off your monitor, and actually turning around face to face, listening to somebody.
That is so very good.
It's just like, it is so simple. But
Yeah.
people don't do that. And yet, if they did that and close the door at the same time when they ask their employee to come in, close the door, turn off the monitor, turn off your phone, and say, how can I help you? They may actually get to the real root of the problem far quicker than a quick rushing down the corridor saying to them, oh no, hi, hello, how are you? Fine. And everybody's rushing around being fine. When of course they're not fine.
Right.
So if you ask the question, you may actually get an answer. The challenge that management have is that they sometimes don't like to ask the question of like, hello and how are you? Because that employee may actually tell them, not give them the answer that they were wanting. Managers have to be trained to attentively listen in order that they get maximum performance and productivity from that employee. There's a bottom line. It's a soft skill, but it's got a hard edge to it.
Yes, very good, very good. And you're so right that a lot of people, I was going to say most, but that's not true. A lot of people, it's more a robotic answer when you ask someone how they're doing, because you don't really want to hear it. It's like, well, I got enough in my own life going on that I don't want to be bombarded with someone else's stuff. So I really don't want to hear what you have to say. So they do other things. So that shows you that they're not really listening. And you can only correct. And if you are sincere and really have a heart for your team, for your people, you want to be able to help them overcome their personal life or their business life situations so that you do have the highest productivity from that person, and you're showing them that you really care, which there again enables them to want to do more for you instead of just instead of thinking of it as a job, instead of as a career that people really care about what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think the word you picked up there, Teresa, was the word care. And there are many managers who think, oh, I haven't got time to care. Well, do you know something? If you're managing people, you actually have to have time to actually have to make the time, because people will respond, they'll work harder, you'll unlock their potential if they feel that they feel valued. It's very, very simple. We human beings, with all the technology in the world and all the iPhones in the world and whatever is coming out tomorrow morning, it doesn't really matter. But when somebody says, thank you, I feel valued for what I've done. If somebody says, I appreciate that conversation or I appreciate your time, they feel, again, valued and recognized for who they are. So put technology out of the window for the moment. We human beings, face to face, one phone, one eyeball to eyeball contact, attentively listening to somebody is actually saying, I do care. Now, it doesn't mean the manager becomes a counselor. I am not suggesting that in one way. I happen to be a therapist. That's not what I'm suggesting. I am suggesting that they are taught, if they don't have these skills naturally, I am suggesting they are taught how to listen attentively with the bottom line of increasing performance in their team.
Yes.
It's not a soft skills, oh, I think we're going to love the world. This is actually saying, how can you actually increase profitability? And you're going to increase profitability by actually getting your employees to work harder. They'll work harder if they like you How many people like their bosses? They'll work harder if they respect you, and they'll work harder if they trust you. Now, like, respect, and value, all those sorts of words. I wonder, with the people who are listening to your podcast, if they have employees who they're responsible for, could actually say, yes, my employees would say they respect me, they trust me, and they value me. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. Very good. And I like that you added that dealing with stress isn't one of those woo-woo, everything is fine, kind of mentalities, because it truly is not what we're talking about here. Of course, we love everything to be just perfect in the world, but it is a matter of stepping back and just being, a true person, working from the heart in a sense, to make sure that everything is working as the best that it can work in a person's life for the results that you desire in the workplace. No, you don't have to be a counselor, but knowing how to at least see the signs, acknowledge the signs, and then direct that person to someone who can help them overcome those issues, so.
That's exactly right. No one's asking the manager to become a counselor. We don't want them to be. We do want them to be able to listen attentively, and we do want them to have empathy with a member of their team. That they can certainly do. Empathy is having one foot in the person's world and not both.
Right.
We do want them to be able to signpost where that employee might go for some help and support. But I do want that manager to actually be able to manage the situation where he says to that employee, you may find this particular resource helpful to you, but please let me know how you get on. If a manager is referring an employee to another place, I don't want that manager to think, clap their hands, say, job done. That's
right.
Not what it's about. It's saying, there is a signpost. I can signpost you to a particular place that may help you, but let me know how you get on.
Exactly. Right.
It's bringing in the troops in case they need them. And so therefore the manager does not have hours to spend with their employee. That I appreciate. But I also appreciate the manager can carve out some time to actually engage. And the word engagement is what is very often missing in workforces today.
Very true. Very true. Well, Carol, this has just been really, really enlightening. And I'm sure it has been very helpful to those who are listening to this podcast, because stress is something that you can't get around. Like you said, there are some good things that we put on ourselves to pressure us into movement. But when it turns to stress and we start having health consequences from that, that's when it's a problem. So as we begin to close out this podcast, we've learned a whole lot about stress in the workplace. But what is it that you're doing next, and where can, if someone's interested, how can they get in contact with you?
Well, they can certainly get in contact with me as a professional speaker. They can get in contact with me with my website, which is carolspiers.co.uk.
And I'll have that on my website as well. So
they can do that. There's also a book that I've written, which is available on Amazon.com, and you liked the title of this, which is called Show Stress Who's Boss. So that book has plenty of tips and strategies and techniques to help people to manage stress. It's not a difficult book. It's not an academic book. This is a book which is easy to read. It's got a lot of illustrations, a lot of quizzes, a lot of questionnaires. It's a book, it's been called the Stress Management Bible, which means people are actually using it.
Yes.
So therefore, yes, I would love to be able to speak to companies. I'd love to be able to I love making a difference to profitability of companies through their people. So yes, I would welcome certainly that opportunity to come to the States, if you can handle the British accent, and start making a difference in the United States of America.
Well, thank you. So I truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be a part of this and share your wisdom and your knowledge about stress. So as we leave and wind this up, let's keep in mind, you people who are listening, what you can do and what actions you can take to begin implementing techniques for nurturing your soul for success to live more consciously. Remember that you matter. You are your biggest asset. So say yes to self-care and stress management. Thank you so much. And until next time, so long.
Thank you for tuning in to Nurturing Soul Success for Conscious Living. Applying these proven strategies will have an awesome effect on the way you view and live your life. What are you waiting for? Start now. You are your biggest asset. These episodes are always available on her website, teresacloudeagle.com. While there, join her community and get your free guide, 7 Super Simple Strategies for Success. If you want to be a sponsor, contact her, Teresa at teresacloudeagle.com. Until next time, your soul and success are connected.